The view from the fire tower was always interesting. To the southwest, the New Haven Railroad tracks skirted the lake. To the northeast, the town. And to the west, the rolling hills of Massachusetts. A good observer knows where smoke is to be expected. His job is to look for the smoke where it doesn't belong. Spotting a fire started by hot ashes from the steam engine, the Sharon observer telephones the Foxborough Tower to confirm his sighting. And then uses his radio to call for a brush truck. A prompt response of enough men with the right equipment, and the fire is extinguished. 5 years ago, this fire would have burned many acres before being controlled. But it is now 1941, and the statewide program of coordinated wildfire suppression is in place and functions well. When a brush fire threatened a town, the local fire department usually let the fire burn until it reached the town line, or some other convenient place where it could be fought using equipment designed for building fires. If you lived in the country where there was no organized fire protection, you were on your own to protect your family and property. Wildland fires had always been a problem in the spring and in the fall, but after the hurricane, they became a year-round menace. The hurricane wreaked havoc on southern New England. It struck without warning and killed 600 people. In the forest, the downed trees covered the ground looking like giant matchsticks, and after they dried out, they would burn like them as well. The government saw an opportunity to put men to work and quickly organized civilian conservation gangs to salvage the timber. The woods were a tinderbox of slash and dead brush, interspersed with major concentrations of stacked logs and lumber. Where ponds were available, the logs were stored in water to protect them from insects and fire. More commonly, the logs were dragged to a central location and stacked. A portable sawmill was set up in the woods, and the better logs were cut into lumber. While the unemployed men appreciated the work, there were no buyers for either the logs or the lumber, and both stayed in the woods. Within a few months, it became obvious that more than a few hand tools were needed to fight a major fire deep in the forest. Miles from the nearest hydrant, these fires would require engines with large booster tanks and portable pumps that could be carried to off-road drafting sites. To effectively operate this equipment on a moment's notice, large numbers of men would need to be recruited and trained. To get the men and equipment to the fires, a fleet of fast, agile engines would need to be designed and purchased. After several serious fires, the state of Massachusetts ordered 14 new forest fire engines and distributed them to fire departments across the state. John Crow, supervising warden, designed these engines to go into the woods carrying the equipment necessary to fight any wildfire. Adding a new dimension to the fire attack, these engines were readily accepted by the fire departments lucky enough to To speed detection, Warden Crow erected 50 new fire towers. He also built a Forest Service building with facilities to train the observers, patrolmen, firefighters, and district wardens who would make the system work. Real-time command and control of the fire activity was provided through expansion of the telephone system and by the installation of one of the first two-way radio systems in the fire service. For the first time, wardens, fire towers, fire patrolmen, and state engines could talk to each other. passage of a law establishing a permit system to control open burning and a program to promote fire safety in the woods rounded out the statewide plan. In the days of open cars, cigarettes and matches were routinely thrown on the ground, starting hundreds of grass fires. On this occasion, getting to the fire was much harder than putting it out. The wind-driven fire in a wheat field moved at awesome speed and was too dangerous to attack directly. The chief decided to light a backfire to burn a strip of ground between the main fire and the buildings. The key to success was to use water to control the size and intensity of the backfire. When the main fire reached the burned-out strip, the fuel was gone and the fire went out. When a grass fire entered the woods, it usually ignited the other vegetation and increased in intensity to become a brush fire. But fires do not always burn in predictable ways, And this fire just followed the grassy trails as it burned through the forest. While never igniting the underbrush, the fire escaped the forest to reach a pile of trash and leaves, and then raced all the way to a frame house. A convenient water source and the prompt arrival of an Ahrens Fox piston pumper saved the house. The fire was easy to see, but hard to reach. Spanning the Rhode Island-Massachusetts line, the fire attracted firefighters from both states. A private road provided the only access to the fire area. Once the engines reached the fire, the mutual aid worked well, and the fire was quickly controlled. The state was literally ablaze during the third week of April, with 6 major fires and of minor ones within the course of a week. The strong, coordinated attack pinched off the flanks of the fire and narrowed the fire front as it burned toward a major highway. As the fire reached the road, the wind shifted and made it easy for the crews to extinguish the fire. In a poetic ending, the fire died in a cemetery. Within moments, the huge loom-up was reported by the observers in several fire towers. The fire developed at an incredible rate and was crowning as the first fire crews responded. The fire reached the first companies as they were beginning to set up and roared right past them as the men ran for their lives. Abandoning the area of heavy timber, the warden ordered a withdrawal and established a staging area to reorganize his men for a second attack. While the chiefs agreed on a plan, there appeared to be a difference of opinion with the local constabulary. The companies moved out to take their assigned positions, establish a water supply, and wet down their sectors. The portable pumps were carried to the creek and lines stretched back to the road. On this April day, everyone was a firefighter. The engines were placed wherever they could reach water. It took a while for the fire to reach the road and creek, which formed the defense line, and by then, the firemen had made it rain in the forest. The raging inferno was transformed into a routine fire when it reached the wet vegetation. After a little refreshment and a lot of picking up, the weary men headed back to their stations. The year 1940 is still remembered for its intense fire activity. The multiple forest fires of late April severely tested the new system and proved over and over again the wisdom of the investment in new ideas and new technology.